Hello, my friends. I am Dr. Matt Creighton III, and I am so excited to start season 3 of Let's Talk About It with Dr. Matt Creighton with Science and Spirituality. So, if you are new to the series, I am a scientist and I'm also a Christian believer. So, I spent the majority of my life as an educator teaching in higher education at universities here in the city of New Orleans, where I reside, Dillard University, where I served as chair of the biology department there, and also I've served as a faculty member, a tenured faculty member at Xavier University here in the city of Louisiana, two great HBCUs, yes. And currently I serve in the role of teacher at St. Augustine High School here in the city of New Orleans, which is the only private Catholic high school for African American young men in the entire world. So I'm an educator across the board. I have published my research. I did research in genomics and bioinformatics throughout my career and trained students in research, traveled across the world to conferences presenting my research findings. And I have now combined my professional life with my personal life. I was raised as a Christian, baptized at the age of 8 years old, assured of my salvation by the age of 12. And as a student of science, I always saw congruences or interfaces between what I was learning in biological science and what I learned in the Bible. It's just the way that we look at it and look at those nuances. And so over the years, I would share that with individuals, and people would like, I just don't get it, Doc. And so what I ended up doing was writing books. So in my series is what the basis of this podcast is. I talk about my two books or topics from the two books. The first is Brain, Mind, Soul, and Spirit, the interface between science and scripture. These can be found on Amazon.com. And the second book is Evolution of Creation, the interface between science and scripture. So we'll be weaving in and out of these particular books and talking about topics as we go along. But I want to get right into it and save the advertisements for a little bit later, okay? So I came on and want to kick off the season because I watched Bishop Jamal Bryant's podcast called Let's Be Clear. And in episode, I want to make sure I get it right. So I'm going to look at it. Season 3, episode 9. He features a guest, Dr. David Johns out of Atlanta, Georgia, who's a historian and theologian. And they talk on the topic of the topic, is gay and Christianity contradictory? So I've given you the season and the episode number so you can go and watch that particular podcast. It is riveting. So be sure to go and take a look at it. But I wanted to address one thing that was in there from a biological standpoint. So since I am a biologist, so one of the things that came up in conversation is what is gender versus sex, and what are the sexes? So in science and spirituality, I want to go to that. So in the book of Genesis, in the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, as a matter of fact, chapter 1, verse 27, it states to us, I put the glasses on, God created man. So he is the verse where he creates man, and it says he created male and female. According to biological sciences, we have two sexes, two biological sexes. There's the male sex and the female sex. Those sexes are determined using two methods in science. One is the outward genitalia. So of course, if the baby's born, or when the baby's born, if there's a penis, the baby is designated as male. If the baby has a vagina, then the baby is designated as female. Intersex is not a third choice. Intersex is when there's not full development based upon maybe glitches in hormonal levels in the early stages of development, where the fetus doesn't develop fully, their reproductive system doesn't develop fully as male or female. And you have to wait till the child gets a little bit older to really kind of determine which hormones kick in and how does the child self-identify by biological sex. Right? So usually a parent will choose the biological sex and have corrective surgery. And that may be contradictory for the child later as they grow older. So oftentimes I will hear people say, well, intersex is a third choice. So it is not a third choice. It is a developmental issue during pregnancy where neither reproductive system, male or female, is fully developed. So under quote unquote normal conditions, you would have the development of a male individual or a female individual. So how does that happen? That's the second mechanism. It's based upon chromosomes. So genetically, we inherit, females inherit two X chromosomes, one X chromosome from her mom, one X chromosome from the father. Therefore, she's XX, and she's designated as female on birth. What does that do? So the XX chromosome stimulates more estrogen and progesterone production during fetal development and decreases or kind of blocks the testosterone pathway, and therefore the child develops into a female. Conversely, if the child inherits an X chromosome from mom and the Y chromosome from dad, then the child is male. And during that same developmental segment, the child will have the development of or more testosterone being produced and developed in the male reproductive system pathway, and will kind of suppress the female pathway, having less estrogen and progesterone produced. And so based upon those scientific methods, the genitalia of the child upon examination and also chromosome composition is how science determines that there are two biological sexes. Okay, so that's biological sex. So now, how does sex and gender relate to one another? Well, gender is a social construct, more of a social construct, because gender takes on the takes for someone's biological sex, and then they put social norms and expectations upon that biological sex. Okay, so what do you mean? Let's clarify that a little bit more. Okay, so biological sex, say for instance your child is born a boy, right? Society will say that you need to dress the child in blue, taking them home from the hospital. Society in your culture may say, as the child is growing, you will buy the child probably little footballs and baseballs or basketballs. You may buy them toy cars and action figures of superheroes, because that's what you would buy for a little boy, right? So there's nothing about the chromosome composition or the genitalia of the child that says he has to play with an action figure rather than playing with a Barbie doll. Okay? So that's what we mean by cultural and society expectations placed upon the biological sex, which is what gender is. Okay, again, if we look at it from the female perspective, so you have a child or a individual who's designated as female. Growing up, you probably put ponytails, a style of hair in ponytails, wear ribbons and bows. She'll dress in dresses. What else? Toys. You'll probably get her dolls, maybe artsy things, tea sets, all of these things. A little, I don't know if they have easy baker ovens anymore, but there may be things pertaining to cooking and kind of domestic toys that would be given to a girl child, because these are society's expectations that's placed upon the female sex. So when you take the society expectations and you pair it with the biological sex, that's when we have gender. Then we begin to have gender discriminations, right? Or gender roles that's expected. So by the time we reach adulthood and we're at the company Christmas party, right? And everybody comes into the break room or wherever we're having the party, the food's all laid out. Many of the female employees, even though they may be on the same level as their male counterparts or even have a higher rank than the counterpart, may assume the role of serving the food because society would expect the females to be the servers of the food, right? And then at the end of the party, you'll probably have most of your male counterparts will say, okay, it's time for us to get back to work. And there would be either the secretaries or some female other staff members who may stay behind and say, okay, we'll clean up and we'll put the extra food away. And there will probably be very few male individuals who would assume that role, right? And males would not be expected to assume that role because they would think, oh, the women are going to do that. So these are things that we began to say, what are gender roles? What are society's expectation upon the biological sex? Okay? And then that's where we get into statements that were offensive by political candidates who would say that's woman's work, right? It comes into the point in the workplace where there's the glass ceiling that we can't have a woman leading or at the head. That's supposed to be done by a male. And even in many of our churches, still won't allow women pastors or a woman bishop or a woman priest, right? So there are caps and there are roles. And by the same token, you can't have a male nun, right? Nuns are all female. So there's expectations based upon biological sex of what you can and can't do, what you should and should not do in society. The last thing we'll hit on here is then what is gender nonconforming? Okay, gender nonconforming is when you are of a biological sex, you know the rules that are placed upon your biological sex. However, you decide, I don't need to conform, I don't have to agree with those particular rules. And that would be something as simple as a celebrity like um, um, who Jason Derulo or Jayden Smith, who will say, okay, I'm going to wear a dress. So, according to society, gender roles and rules, females are supposed to wear dresses and skirts. Men are not. But they are biologically considered male, and they decide, I'm going to wear the attire of what's assigned to a female, right? Or I'm going to wear eyeshadow. I'm going to put on lashes. Things that would be typically done by the opposite sex, a member of a male. We're saying male to female. So typically what would be characterized or designated for females to do, you'll have a male doing. And you can have that vice versa. So a female would say, well, typically men are supposed to play tackle football, but I want to be a football player. And so she tries out for the football team, tackle football team, and she's the only female on the team of guys, right? So these are things that we're talking about, gender nonconforming, breaking those rules, breaking the norm, breaking the stereotype of what your biological sex is supposed to do and say according to, or behave according to society rules. Oh, there was one last one. There was last one, and then that we'll close on that one because you're probably saying you haven't hit. Well, what is transgender, right? So, what is transgender? Okay, transgender is, I would say, another part of our development. So our sex, our biological sex, and our identity of our gender identity, and our sexuality are all kind of separate. We think of them as just one lump sum, but they're actually three separate things. So we have biological sex that's determined by science. And then we move over into psychology in the sexuality piece of self-identity. So we tend to have the id, ego, superego, and we get our identities based upon those three personas of our personality. Well, when we look into the mirror and we are defining ourselves and who we are as an individual, you see yourself as a biological sex. So you say, am I male? Am I female? And I am for me, I would say I'm male, I'm African American, I'm da 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 da, right? And you would go on and on. What's your identity? For a person who's transgender, their sexual identity that they believe in their mind and they identify themselves because we believe who we are in our minds. And then I'll go back a step. So that's what I believe in my mind. And then I look in the mirror at my physical body and say, oh, well, yeah, my genitalia is aligned with what I believe myself to be. I have male genitalia and I believe myself to be male. Okay? And I was designated at birth on my birth certificate by a doctor as being male based upon my genitalia. All right. So with transgender, here's another individual. Your mind is looking at you in the mirror and you're saying, I am male. But you look down, and as you're talking to yourself and you're believing, but you look down at your body and you see breast and a vagina, which says by the doctor's designation at birth, you are female because you have a vagina. Your self-identity does not align with your physical body. And so that's essentially what transgender is, where your self-identity of who you are does not align with your physical body. The next step that people then get confused on sometimes, or seems a little confusing, is when that individual makes the choice to live an authentic life. So they decide, my mind says I'm male, my body is saying female. I'm going to do corrective surgery, perhaps to remove my breast and have a chest so that I can look more, or my physicality aligns more with my mental identity of who I am. Whether those surgeries are just, as they call, top surgery, and the person's fine, or whether it's top and bottom corrective surgery to reassign your sexuality. And then we could use the term transsexual, where you've gone from being female to male, or you had the surgery and you went from male to female. So not only were you transgender, so the mental not aligning with the physical, you did the correction surgery-wise so that your self-identity now aligns with the physical, or the physical aligns with your mental sexual identity. Okay, so it's two things. So you got transgender and then you have the transsexual. In the process of journey of becoming transgender, or assuming the society roles of what a female or male should look like, these individuals undergo counseling. And so they go to lots of therapy to talk about their identity, who they believe themselves to be, and then the process of changing their style of dress and doing that publicly, and then making the awareness for everyone in their inner circles, their employment circles, their family members. And when they make that step legally, they then have to change driver's license, their legal documents, professionally, go to HR, and then begin changing the pronouns and the like. So it's a long journey. It's a brave journey. It takes lots of courage to transition when you've been known all of your life as one biological sex, and now you're moving into another biological sex. So we give accolades to those individuals who have the courage to live authentically so that their mental identity aligns with their physicality. All right, so there we are. So biological sex, there are two biological sexes, as it says in the book of Genesis, aligns with what we have in science, and that's based upon genitalia and chromosome composition. But we are, and I do want to emphasize that I personally am very accepting of individuals when it comes to gender roles and what is gender, society rules that's placed upon an individual. Whether an individual chooses to be gender nonconforming, whether they choose to, as an old term, kind of cross-dress and just be satisfied wearing the clothing of the other gender, or if they are actually transgender, and they began to make those corrections to their physicality so that it aligns. As long as we live in peace and happiness, we worship God in spirit and in our truth, right? Then we are doing what we are asked to do by the Lord. More so for those who are not transgender, who don't know any of these things, and you're confused by it. Remember the commandments that we're given to love God and to love our neighbor as ourselves. We don't have to understand our neighbor. We just have to love, and that loves means respect them. It doesn't mean that you have to run up and hug them and kiss them and take them out to dinner. It just means that you respect them as a child of God and a human being who deserves the respect of another. All right, so that is the end of our episode. Thank you for joining me for season 3, and I can't wait to kick it off and do it live with you. So I am live on Facebook on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. I'll do this live, and we'll do the recording of that live broadcast posted here on YouTube channel. So if you have not done so, be sure to follow and like and follow, and please share if this has been inspirational to you or enlightening to you. Please help me grow the YouTube channel. I love you, and I thank you for the privilege of your time. I am Dr. Mac E. Creighton III with Science, Faith, and Spirituality.